Okay, you'd have to come to one of two conclusions if you read my background, and that is that I'm 107 years old or I can't keep a job, one of the two. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to share some ideas with you today. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'd like you, those people in the room who are in a relationship, I'll carry on with Frank's theme, I suppose, to a degree. I'd like you to write the loved one's name down. Now, if it's a child or a member of the desired sex or whatever, that's fine, but just write the person's name down. Everyone do it, please. If you want to get something out of this, you get involved. That's all. Righto. Answer the question, just a yes or no beside their name, as to whether you think you're in a committed relationship. So, are you committed? And then the second question I want you to ask yourself, are you in an engaged relationship, and what's the difference? So those of you that just feel you're in an engaged relationship, you can put down yes or no. If you don't know what the difference is in your own mind, if you haven't formed the distinction, then that's what we're going to talk about for about 45 minutes. And I was at a presentation in Sydney where I was in the audience, and Alan Jones was presenting along with Norman Schwarzkopf and a few other people, and I think Brad Cooper when he was out of jail. And Alan Jones said commitment. He said commitment's a case of bacon and eggs. He said in a bacon and egg dinner, the chicken's got an interest, but the pig's committed. And it makes a fundamental point. So what I want to look at is the effect of how we interpret our relationship with other people and our degree of commitment and our degree of engagement in that relationship, and how that then feeds into what comes out of a business in terms of results. So if I can get my little driver, make sure it works all right. Hands up if you are an employer, please. So you actually pay the bills, okay? How many of you are an employer in your own business? You've founded the business, or at least you own it now, okay? Someone asked me a question some years ago that sort of stopped you in your tracks when someone asked a very unusual question. They said, what's it like to wake up every day and have to find your own wages? And you go, but that's in fact what you do. How many of you are employed but manage other people, are responsible for other people? I made a slip up myself there. A fellow called Ross Perot, who contended the American presidential elections about 3 or 4 rounds ago, said you can manage inventory, but you've got to lead people. So I should have said lead people. But anyone here who has no one to lead? Okay, so we've pretty well covered everyone. Anyone not going to put their hand up no matter what question I ask? Okay, so right, we've covered it. Henry Ford said, in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So we're going to have a look at some of the things that work and don't work. I want your permission to run through for about 10 minutes some basic concepts as background, and then I want to look at a perspective for looking at the way that we engage and commit in business, and then I want to provide you with a concrete cast iron step-by-step tool for taking advantage of some of those realisations. Is that all right to work on that basis with you? Okay, so the first part of this is going to be a bit kaleidoscopic. This man's engaged in Russian roulette. He's got one chance in 6 of surviving, and it's not far off the odds of you hiring or finding someone ideal for your business, because the odds are about 1 in 5. Has anyone in the room come across the Gallup Incorporated Q12 survey? Hands up if you have. Okay, not too many people. It's a scary survey. Each even year for the last 10 years, Gallup Incorporated have done a survey throughout the world of about 40-odd economies. They draw 1,000 people out of each who are in employment. These are people who are salaried. And they ask them 12 key questions. Those questions you can pick up on the web. Just Google Q12. It's that well known these days. You'll pick it up. If you don't get it first time, just put Gallup in after it and you'll get it. And those 12 questions are used to indicate the level of engagement of people in the business. Now, their definition of engagement is someone who puts a fair bit of emotional energy, as well as their intelligence, inspiration and talent into their job. And they probably wake up in the morning, and a few minutes after they're awake, they're probably thinking about how they manifest themselves in that job. And then the other end of that scale is what they call actively disengaged people. Now, actively disengaged people, I doubt if there's anyone in the room that can comprehend how those people think. But essentially they're saboteurs, and they come to work pissed off with the world in general, the survey demonstrates the fact that at least on 3 occasions on average, each of the people that fall into that category have had a major conflict with someone in their life outside of work in that month. So they're not ticked off with the business, they're ticked off with everyone, and the business just comes into the scope. And those people are actively disengaged. They will do anything they can to damage the business if the opportunity arises. They'll quite happily dismantle what engaged people build. And one of the scary statistics that comes out of the survey is that 25% of those people who are in that actively disengaged bracket express absolutely no intention of ever leaving that business. So they're embedded. The way that translates, there's slight variations across economies and cultures, but roughly it works out this way, that about 20% of people come to work engaged in what they do. A little more than that, a fraction more, come to work not very happy with anything at all and quite happy to do damage. It probably gives them a sense of relief or something like that. And then the other 60% are just turning up. Now, I didn't make the numbers up, they're factual. And if you're in the marketplace and you're engaging people in your business, employing people in your business, or you're working with a team, then if there's no strict selection process in bringing those people on board, in inviting them into your tribe, then you're going to get a cross sample of the population. And according to Gallup, I've got 8 years or four samples there of about 160,000 people. In statistical terms, is valid. Then if you've got a broad cross-section of the population, 1 in 5 are engaged, 1 in 5 is a saboteur, and the other 3 are waiting to find out what happens. And that's not a very productive or promising sort of structure to a business. How do you find the people that are engaged, or people who have got the sort of standards and the makeup personally that would come into your business and become engaged in your business? And the answer is it's a lot easier to attract them than to find them. So if you can create yourself in a way that your business flies its flag and you're seen to be the sort of business that great people are looking for, then they'll be attracted to you. There's one fundamental fact, and that is that the best of employees, the people, what the market's termed in some cases, the affluent purpose seekers, people who want meaning in their life and want to add meaning to other things, those people, the best of employees, are looking for what? This is interactive, guys. So what I mean, some of you are in an employment position there, but let's put yourselves all in it. Let's say that you sold the business tomorrow, but didn't want to stop work, so you then decided you would go and join another tribe. You would seek an employer. What sort of employer would you look for? If you're at the top of your game, if you're a committed player, you're someone that's very, very good at what you do and you've made yourself that way, what are you going to look for in an employer? The same. All right, so the best of employees are looking for the best of employers. And sometimes that's a bit of a mindset. What do you mean, I have to qualify? It's quite interesting, the number of employees these days who'll, after they finish their interview, then interview the employer. Right? And I've had a few clients report back on the shock when they get declined. They've accepted the person's done the background checking, and they've declined the employment opportunity, not because they were offered more money. We're going to also have a look a little bit at some brainwashing techniques that you may care to use with your team. And brainwashing for me is not a case of psychology, it's more a case of hygiene. So I'm going to look at just some ways of reframing things within your business and getting a few things clear that will make a change to yourself and the way that the people that work with you look at their engagement in the business as well. Okay, still background. One of the essential background to any sort of business is that the business must have a clear vision. So there's got to be something, some reason, something we're striving to become. And I did an exercise year before last with a major corporation. They're an American company. They operate in multiple countries throughout the world. They happen to be domiciled in the same building that I am in the Gold Coast, and I earmarked their CEO for a bit of attention. So I went up and had a talk to him at one stage. I made some observations on the business to him, and he said, so what do you think the problem is? And I said, well, I just get the feeling from looking at the way that the team behaves, they're good people, but the company's lost its way. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, what's the vision for the business? And he turned around and he said, Rebecca, where's our vision statement? Now, it took them 3 days to find it, and that's not an exaggeration, I'm telling you the absolute truth. Somewhere in the place was a vision mission statement. The challenge was that it had been formed very thoughtfully about 10 years before, and then the graphic artists had got at it and rearranged a few things so it looked prettier, and then it meant nothing. And we did an exercise over a period of time to clarify what their vision, mission, values were. The interesting thing was that we came out with more or less what they'd started with 10 years before, but we weeded the garden and got rid of all the misinterpretations that had been put in there in the meantime. Because the people that had first formed that were clear on what the business is about. But over a period of time, the newer generations lost sight of why they were there and what it was all about. So the first task of anyone who would lead other people is to make sure that they're crystal clear on what the vision is for this particular tribe, exercise, enterprise, whatever. And I think it was a lady called Parker wrote a book called The Path. Anyone read it? Okay. And she said, a vision statement should be a single sentence, understandable by a 12-year-old and recallable at gunpoint. So make it simple, make it something that is from the heart and that you can recall all the time. If you can't recall your vision statement for the business, then the tribe's probably lost its way. You're the captain of the boat and you're not looking at the compass. We're going around in circles and we're certainly not heading for the destination that we originally set out for. So any business that can't articulate very clearly and strongly its vision runs the risk of not having anything that anyone can align their energies to. The next thing after that is that you need a mission statement. We're here and we want to be there, so what do we have to do in order to achieve that? And a mission statement is quite simply a statement of the products, services and actions that you'll follow in order to achieve your vision. And again, if you can't articulate that to your people, then you've got no rule or quick check system to find out whether what we're doing right now aligns with our purpose for being here in the first place. So your vision and mission. There needs to be boundaries on all behaviour, right? So values are essentially the boundaries that you choose to apply to your business. In my business, our number one value is effectiveness, so I won't work with clients unless I can see a result coming out of that, and I won't continue to work with them unless they're getting results from my engagement. Otherwise, there's no point. So values put boundaries on what you're prepared to do or not do in the pursuit of your vision, in the pursuit of your mission, in order to achieve your vision. And then for forward momentum, what you certainly need are goals, milestones along the way, which are quantifiable and dated. So there you've got a basic, and anyone that's done Vern's stuff for a long time, what's this translate straight to? What's the other equivalent piece of business collateral you've got? The one-page business plan, for those who've used the one-page business plan. Okay, so think of when you're filling in your vision and mission for that and your corporate values, that this is a good picture to keep in mind to make sure they're there. And it's a good thing to make sure that you feel you are engaged in and you're committed to your vision, mission, values. If they're empty words, it's worth going through the exercise. The client I mentioned previously, once we'd clarified the vision, mission and value statements, that CEO had enough insight to then invest about 8 hours of the executive team's time, and that's 12 $500,000 a year executives, in talking through this, them having dialogue facilitated by me in this instance, and getting absolute clarity around what their vision, mission, values meant before they then roll it out to their 1,200 employees. So your vision is essentially, what do you strive to be? And if you can't articulate that in a single sentence that a 12-year-old would understand and recite it under pressure, then it might be interesting to go through that exercise and see what changes in you when you do that. Your mission statement is purely and simply the journey you'll undertake to become what you said your vision was, and your values essentially the things that tell you whether you're within boundaries and on track. And they're things that will always be important in the context of the business. By the way, the mission can shift because the market shifts. The vision generally stays the same, but the values seldom change. Okay. One of the exercises I'd like you to think about doing, who remembers from school what happens if you take a sewing needle and stroke it with a magnet a few times? Anyone? They didn't do that in your school? Take a magnet, take a steel needle, stroke the the steel needle with the same pole of the magnet in the same direction repeatedly, and you'll actually magnetise the needle. If you then take that and stick it to a little piece of cork and float it in a bowl, what happens? It'll point due north. Right, so you've made yourself a compass. What's that got to do with what I was just talking about? Would you like to repeat that for me? It's true. If you stroke your people in the same way all the time with the same values, then they'll always know which way is north. They'll always know what to do in the circumstances. If you want to put a note down, I haven't got anything on the slide on this one. If you want to go and look up Transforming Giants on the web and download the paper from Harvard Business Review by Professor Moss Cantor, just if you look up Transforming Giants, that's enough. In that paper, she looks at a number of large corporations that have chosen to operate from very clear values, vision and mission statements. In fact, that's the driving force. It's the thing they wash out right through their people. And the results that they've found are quite remarkable. The companies that have elected to operate from a high moral platform enjoy better share value, higher price, a higher margin, less conflict with stakeholders, a better brand value, and a number of other very significant P&L and balance sheet items that weren't the reason that they chose to operate from that basis in the first place. Do you understand? So these are good, hard, concrete, worldly results out of choosing to work from something quite esoteric. One quick example was that I think it was 2004, Beirut was bombed and Procter & Gamble had 123 staff there. Procter & Gamble's number one value is we put people first. Now, that's their statement to their marketplace because they produce a lot of hygiene products and things of that nature. So it's good to tell your customers that we put you first, not a dollar first, etc., and our goods will be good for you. But it also applies internally as well as externally. So when Beirut was bombed during business hours, the Beirut manager with 123 staff out of the tens of thousands of staff that in Procter & Gamble's world was pretty low man on the totem pole. It was midnight in New York, and he didn't know what to do. So any guessing what he might have done if you're in that situation? By the way, there's nothing in the operations manual that says if your office is bombed, right? There was nothing that covered that procedure. So what could he do in this instance? The city was under fire. Sorry? Put his people first. He did. He hired a 747 for $5 million, which was slightly over his better cash allowance. Put 123 staff on it plus their families and flew them out. Right, when the board found out about it the next morning, what happened? He got a medal, right? They congratulated him. They couldn't do anything else because if the board was to act with integrity, they would have put their people first had they been making the decision. He did, and they endorsed him. The irony came a couple of days later when the bombing had stopped and then he flew his 123 staff and their families back in again. The staff then elected to leave their families to sort out what had happened in the suburban areas of Beirut and check on the other relatives. Meanwhile, the 123 staff to a man and woman went back to the office and started up. Procter & Gamble were back online half an hour after the planes landed. No other company had that advantage. Is that good for the company in a business sense? Okay, so there's a material benefit that came out of it. Do you think he flew them out so that he could get them back to work quickly? So when you act from good first principles, then good consequences usually flow. And it's something to be mindful of when you're trying to make the decision as to whether you invest the $50 or the $5 million to stay true to your values. All I can do is assure you that in every piece of research I've done and all of my experience, it'll pay off. So it's worth sticking to your values no matter what. Your vision, mission and values should be very much like a stained glass window in a cathedral. The stained glass window in a cathedral is there to really advertise to the people outside the good stuff on the inside. But to the people who are on the inside with the sunlight streaming through it, then it should be positively uplifting. So your vision, mission and value statements should be something that you can state in the public that would make the public feel warm and comfortable towards you and to think that they understood you, feel they understood you. But at the same time, it should be meaningful and valid to the people inside the business as well. And by the way, if your vision statement is something you don't want the public to know about, you better recast it because there's something dysfunctional about it. Okay, so that's the first quick download of some concepts, because the rest of what I cover is predicated on those. The next piece is about you personally, and it'll take about 5 minutes to cover. This is how your brain works. And I've spent a lifetime studying this sort of thing. This is the canned version of it in 5 minutes. You can read about it, the long version, some other time. But here we go. All of you have a subconscious which has got a storage capacity beyond calculation. Right? The number of possible neurological connections that you can form are, they reckon the number is larger than the number of particles in the known universe, just to get a number on it. So the bottom line is you've got a system there with a storage capacity better than any set-top box you can buy at the moment. And there's plenty of evidence that says that you've stored within you, each of you now has stored within you impressions of every instant of your life, every experience you've had since you were born, and there's evidence to say that before you were born as well, right? So while you're in the womb. And that you've recorded instances of that, and that if we could stimulate the areas of your brain associated with those memories, then we could have you re-experience them. Now, probably the most mundane version of that is when you catch a certain scent, be it a perfume or some particularly strong scent. Who's had an instance where they've done that and then suddenly everything comes back to you? Like almost the conversation, the scenery, how you felt at the time, everything. Okay? So this is a similar thing, but taken further. You've got stored within you an impression of everything that's ever happened to you up to this point in your life. The numbers, well, they reckon 97.3% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But the numbers, like the amount of information you're processing as a sensory receptor are about 2 billion bits per second. So every pore in your skin, every hair, every millimetre of your skin itself, your whole internals, your digestive system, all of your internal sensory mechanism, every pixel on your eyeballs, your ears, everything that you receive sensory information with is wired into your unconscious. It's the thing that's running you. And if you need to think about that, how many people here are carefully keeping their blood pressure at, between 120 and 140, and how many of you are remembering to beat your heart and breathe and stuff like that? And the reason you're not thinking about that is because your unconscious is running you. Your autonomic system is quite happily keeping you going. And if that part of your brain dies, then you die. So a large part of your brain is running on automatic all of the time, and all of your senses are wired into it. So all of the sensory information that you absorb through your being are fed into your unconscious, and impressions of it stored there. So that's one side of your brain. The other part of your brain is your consciousness. Now, it's an issue because it's got 6 to 8 load limit. Load limit's a bit like coat hooks. So you can put a task on a task on a task on a task on a task on. When you get to 8 or 9 tasks start getting shuffled off, not in any order, not in a logical order, not in an order of priority, and not in an order of chronological, they just fall off. The industry that spent most of the time and money studying this fact is the airline industry. Because when you flew here or fly anywhere else, your pilot's been unloaded as far as they possibly can unload her or him. Right, because they've found that if the pilot's loaded up, paying attention to storm on the radar, the fact that the cargo load's slightly out of balance, number 4, engine seems to be using more fuel than another, I've got low air pressure there, there's an aircraft in the area without radio contact, and there's wind shear at the airport, and the hostie sticks her head in and says, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" And the pilot says, "Yeah," and she said, "Would you like sugar with that?" And we all die because something got forgotten, okay? And that's an exaggeration, but it's scarily close to the truth. There's no way that in that state you can decide not to think of things. Now, practical examples for all of you are you've left home one morning thinking that you've got to pick up something absolutely vital. It may be register the car or pick the dry cleaning up at the dry cleaners because you've got an engagement party that night or something like that. So you leave home going, must get the milk, must get the clothes, must get the rego done or whatever. On the way, you're going to call on your mobile. Right, that's 2 tasks we're on to. Plus you're thinking about the project you didn't finish yesterday, that's 3. Right, and you walk into the office and someone says, "Can you give me a hand with this?" Right, by the time you've had 2 other phone calls, right, and the other thing you can't forget, how are you starting to feel now in terms of having space to think? Who can already feel the pressure you'd be under, right? No different to a computer. Load a computer up with 8 or 9 programs, then try and run the 10th program. It doesn't run too well because the computer's run out of RAM. Well, at 7 or 8 tasks, we're out of RAM. So we get snappy, we get tense, we get stressed, and we're not resourceful to other people. But we start to shed load. So things drop off that peg. Now, our life depends on our bringing our partner's dry cleaning home. So there's no sane way in the world you're going to forget it. But a whole bunch of things happen during the day. And you survive. Like you stagger up the driveway, in the door, and you say, I'm here. Holy cow. What did you forget? The one thing that you left that morning knowing that you couldn't forget. What happened to it? It dropped off the hook. So your consciousness is very, very limited in its capacity. By the way, anyone that believes in multitasking, pop to a website, have a look. There's a good article there. It's a total furphy. There's a traffic centre in your head that'll only switch one task at a time. Women are very good at time slicing, so they can sort of rock the cradle, iron, stir the pot, talk to mum on the phone and watch Days of Our Lives, right? So they're better at time slicing than males are. Males are a bit worse than that. A male's got a load limit under 24 years of age. A male's only got a load limit of four items at a time. And hence the traffic accidents. An old traffic cop once said to me, he said, young blokes, manual car, steering wheel, gear lever, brake, clutch, they're full. And there's truth in that observation as well. And by the way, males with a remote control in their hand have got one. So, at home anyway. So if you're made up this way, and I'm not telling you a story, I want to educate you a little bit. So this is true. It's a true representation of how we function. So if one part of your brain's capable of storing an impression of everything that's ever happened to you up to this point in your life, and the other one's got a limit of 6 to 8 tasks, what happens if you suddenly become aware of everything up till now that ever happened to you? It's scary. You'd probably just seize, right? And there've been instances of it. Okay, so if you were designing this thing, you'd put a block in between. So we'll block one from the other, but there's then the question, why would you have the unconscious if you're going to block it off? The answer is it's there as a resource for you. There's a way of actually programming the blockage between your unconscious and conscious. That block is known as the reticular activating system, and the way that you activate it is with goals. Now, you can read goals, or you can read strategic goals or milestones on a strategic plan for business. This is personal, but I've never coached a business in my life. Right? I've only ever coached the people in it. So everything here relates to the people running businesses or running parts of those businesses. So goals are neat because they punch a hole through the reticular activating system and let any information relevant to the goal come through. Now, a good example would be who's ever decided to buy a particular car of a particular colour, and then what happens? You see them everywhere, right? So you open the paper and there's 2 exactly that colour in there. Turn TV on, they're there too. You walk out, your neighbour's got one, they've had it for 2 years, right? And then you drive from here to Newcastle or something like that, what happens? You see lots. Now, here's the bit I need you to make the conceptual leap on. For you to see lots, your retina processed every car that went by you, every single one of them. Otherwise, you couldn't have selected the ones that fitted the profile you set. So there's an example of the 2 billion bits of processing. You're actually processing everything you see at an unconscious level, but you only become aware of those things that satisfy your goals. So the answer to waking up the genie in your head is to set goals. You set goals, you become aware of much more of reality. So how does that feed into what I want to talk to you about? We're down to it. If you want to release the genie out of the bottle, then part of that is setting goals in a business. But people won't accept those goals unless certain preconditions exist. In the book, Solving the People Puzzle, I've drawn the analogy between the matrix and wanting to get this concept across. If you think about the matrix, it's rather cool because in the matrix, Neo lives in a false universe, but he gets to the point of awareness where he actually starts to see the code and he can get behind it and see what reality is, at least that level of reality. And in doing that, he takes mastery of it and he's able to basically manipulate it to his own ends. This is a little bit of the matrix that happens in business, which a lot of people aren't aware of, or if you are aware of it, it's not quite clear on how you can turn that to your advantage. So I'm going to put some tools in your hands right now, and the only thing I can hope is that you use them morally. So you can scale everyone in your business on a scale of competence and commitment. Now, commitment, for my definition, and this is only a definition, commitment's an internal thing. People are either committed to doing a good job in and of themselves or they're not. Whether they are engaged in your business is another matter. So there are people who are committed and will do the right thing under almost all circumstances, and there are people who are not committed and are basically there out of self-interest. So we're committed to a group, tribal goal if you like, or committed to something else. Not committed to that one, that's for sure. And then the cross matrix is pretty easy to work out, or cross axis, and that is someone's either competent in the job or they're not yet competent and may never be. So if you could scale everyone in your business on this, put a 0 in the middle, 5 out that way, 5 that way, and you could plot the initials of every person in your team on this scale. With that started, there are certain strategies that work and others that don't work, depending on where the person is in the quadrant. So if someone's in the incompetent, uncommitted, they have no skill and no will, they won't do it and they can't do it, then the first question you ask is, how the hell did they get here in the first place? Because you've got a major HR and selection and induction problem. And the second thing is, if that's what you've got to work with, and it can happen in certain restricted types of employment, government departments or others, then the only way you can possibly work with those people is to direct them. Do this, then do that, do it to that degree, then come back and see me and get the next step. It's the only way you'll get any sort of progress at all, and it's extremely wearing. You might as well do it yourself. If someone's not yet competent, but they don't have the ability to learn, what do you do then? What do you do? No penalty for speaking up. I won't pick on you. Right? So what do you do if they're not yet competent but don't have the ability to learn? Sorry? Work with them. And you put a certain amount of time in and they're still not showing any capacity to absorb the skills and knowledge that you need in your business. Yeah, you broaden their employment opportunities. Okay, so unless you're a sheltered workshop or something with a social mission, I like Dan Kennedy said, people exist for one reason, to make the business money. And that's a bit harsh. But, if they're not making the business money, what are they doing there? So if the person's got the capacity to train them, then you train them. If they've got the will to learn, then you're going to acquire an asset. You're going to develop an asset. Very good. I'm going to come back to this one because what about when someone can do the job, but they're not in any way committed to the goals that you've set in the business, and they're not engaged either? You feel they just do the minimum. They grumble and groan, they point out limitations, they draw boundaries around their work and personal life. I'm not doing that, it's 5 o'clock, and that's not my responsibility. They never give praise to anyone else, and they're generally unhappy. So they're symptoms of a person who, even though they're competent in the job, is not committed to developing themselves or to joining the tribe or to investing any more than the mere minimum of energy or intelligence that they contracted for in the pursuit of the goals of the business. So what do you do with those people? Yep, 5% of the time you can motivate them. 5% of the time, the reason they're not engaged is they didn't realise what it was all about. You brought them in, you gave them a job description, they go through the process, and they don't know that there's a grander plan or a purpose or there's any reason why they should give more. And it's neurologically impossible for us to engage in a process that doesn't have some sort of meaning on our personal scale of things. So if you've done nothing to engage that person, nothing to draw a connection between what they want out of life, their purpose, and what the business is attempting to do, your enterprise is about, then you won't get engagement. So 5% of the time, the light goes on, they go, is that what we're about? Oh, wow, and they'll get into it. The other 95% of the time, they'll sit tight because these people are in your business for their own comfort. They come to work, they've learned it all by rote, they just go through the motions, they get paid and they go home. And generally, they're a thorn in your side or a thorn in the side of the team. For those of you that are employers or bosses or leaders in the situation, up the top, you may be aware of people like that, but you put up with them. But the scary thing is that your best people put up with them 8 hours a day, 5 days a week or more. And there's some interesting consequences out of that. As for the people who are committed in the business and competent at their task, what do you do with them? It's pretty straightforward, you delegate, and that's the other part of the process I'll go through in chapter and verse. So you can delegate to the ones who are competent and committed. This is the goal I want to achieve, or this is the outcome I'm looking for. This is how it dovetails into the other results that other people in the business are producing. Will you take it on? And those people, provided they can see that it fulfills a purpose, oh, there's a catch. You know, if these people are competent, they're probably intelligent as well. And being intelligent, they probably seek to understand things and think they deserve an explanation. So just telling them something may not be good enough. It may be far more worthwhile walking them through the process or engaging them in it and then asking the key questions. How would you do that? The catch is that in the world of employment, if you've got a team and you're under pressure and you need something done at 5 o'clock, you'll stick your head out the door, and Mary is one of the committed competents, right? And John is an uncommitted competent. Now, Mary's working flat out and she's a good soul. She's the heart and soul of the place. And John grinds through the work, and it's really, really hard to get people with his qualifications and skill set. It's not much fun working with him, but hey, someone's got to do the job. So you've got a job that just needs to be done. It's 5 to 5. You stick your head out of the office. Who do you ask to do it? Why? But John's got less work. Yeah. Who knows that if you ask John, you're going to be in for grief? Right? It's not my job, or it's 5 o'clock, or I've got a commitment, or it'll be something. So you ask Mary, why do you do that? Oh, by the way, Mary says, look, I understand. I'll just ring my fiancé and put off our engagement party. But she will, because they do. But the challenge is, you know what? The goodwill's not bottomless. And they know that they're propping up someone down in the bottom left quadrant. And eventually, the good people leave. Why is that? Because they can. Would you employ them? Okay, so they're portable. The people down the bottom are like the 25% that said they'd never leave. Why wouldn't they leave? Because they'd have to learn something new, and they're not into stressing themselves in any way. I know all the furniture here's here. I can go through this job with my eyes closed, and usually do. So why would I go to a new job where I had to actually be under the spotlight, seen to perform for a period of 3 to 6 months till I finish my probation, and then find out how to settle in, how everything works, and then rearrange it to my comfort? Why would I do that? I'm better off here. By the way, anyone that's agonised over getting rid of a bottom left and has finally gone through who'd like a process to sort them out, to either move them up or move them out? I'll give you a guaranteed, no unfair dismissal solution. Would you like that? Would be a good takeaway. All right, this is a guarantee. There's nothing impractical about what I give you. It all works in the real world. So we'll come to it in a second. So the challenge is that if you don't address this issue, then your good people leave, and then you end up with what I call a dead star. You've got people who think the business is wonderful but can't do it. They're the top rights, right? You've got a few down here that just don't want to be here, but they fill in time anyway. And the bottom left now created a little empire for themselves, got nothing at all to do with the goals of the business. Who thinks that sounds like the worst of government departments? I'm not slinging off. I mean, that's where it does happen. It can. I've also seen a university in Australia with a Centre of Executive Excellence go through exactly the same thing. So its Centre of Executive Excellence wasn't, right? Because it had driven out all of the competent people. And so the place just was a dead start. It rotated, lost $2.4 million. Isn't a bad loss for a Centre of Executive Excellence teaching people to run profitable businesses. All right, so how do you cure this? Well, here's the offer I'll make you now. And if you get no other takeaway than this, I think it'll probably be worthwhile today. Or my session, I should say. And it's this. If some of your people in the room were ill in some way, you had a little, we'll call it disease AB, whatever it is, okay? And all the rest of you are healthy, and it's difficult to detect, we're not sure whether you're an AB or not, would it be really handy if I had a true panacea, that is a cure here, a thing, which I could give all of you, and the ones that had A, B would be instantly cured, or we'd kill them, but anyway, there wouldn't be a problem, and all of the rest of you would feel better. Would that be a good solution? Because that's what I'm going to share with you, right? So here it is, as simple as this. For everyone, first of all, create the challenge. Now, you should hear echoes of what other people have said in what I'm saying, because there's only basic truths in business. We all look at it from different angles. If you look at it from my angle, from other angles, you might actually start to look at reality. But create change, challenge people, because what will the top rights do when you challenge them? Yeah, that sounds good. Yep, okay, how do we do this? What will the top lefts, what will the bottom lefts do when you challenge them? We're going to change things. Now, these people have got everything organised for their own comfort. You're going to change stuff? I don't think so. I've always done it like this. And what you're asking them to do is stop doing things by rote and start thinking about how you're going to do things now. And you'll see enormous pushback. So first thing is create change for the sake and challenge for the sake of growth and improvement, and you'll immediately see a polarisation. Right? You'll get all the goats to the left and all the sheep to the right. The next thing you'll do is negotiate key performance indicators with people. How do we measure what you do? Oh, I'm in accounts, you can't measure anything. I think Alan probably fixed that. Right? Sales, nowhere to hide in sales. Production, pretty well the same. So there's no part of a business you can't put a KPI on, key performance indicators. Right? So agree on what those key performance indicators are, and like a good coach, negotiate them. You know, just the stretch, just that little bit of extra, as we had this morning. And you'll get the same thing again. Top lefts will go, this is cool. How do I go? And the bottom lefts will go, who do you think you are to tell me that you're going to now start? I've been doing this job forever. I know what I'm doing. If it wasn't for me, the whole place would fall down. So you'll get a whole bunch of that. But the next thing is the thing that makes the difference. Monitor and feedback. Assess what you're seeing. No different to what Alan was talking about in terms of numerical key performance indicators on the financial side, goes right through the business. So monitor and provide feedback. And if you want the absolute ace version of the cure, the first lot of feedback can be verbal, but the second lot of negative feedback is always written. Okay, and then the third lot and the fourth lot, how long do you reckon the bottom lefts will stay? Right, they leave, never gracefully, right? Usually with the helpful information, you'd be broken a week, but they go. And you haven't fired them. You've simply provided them with feedback. But I tell you what, they feel the noose tightening. And provided you're following all due process and you're being objective about it, they'll either step up or step out. By the way, you can get a quick scurry up a bit, but they can't sustain the performance. They'll drop back because there's no commitment. It's all false. It's like being in a relationship where you're there just for the convenience of yourself and the other person now wants some consideration. Oh, well, I'll give them some consideration to shut things down a bit, but you can't sustain it because the internal fire's not there. It's no different in employment. Useful? It works. Right, so you've now got the tool, with that goes the responsibility to apply it. We have about 10 minutes. It's a tool for applying it. This guy could probably get a pretty good piece of music out himself, but he's probably better off conducting the orchestra. I want to share with you the bones of delegation. There's nothing unique in what I'm going to share, and it's not original on my part. This is an analysis over years of working with clients, reading a lot, learning from other people, and then just doing it. So this is the boiled-down version of how to delegate. And what I've found is that my clients have found is that delegation is a pure and simple process. If you get the process right, you get perfect delegation. If you don't get the process right, then you get something else. Pick the people with the will and then build the skill if necessary. If you can get someone with the will and the skill, that's great. So that dovetails into what we talked about before. By the way, anything you want on this, this is in the book, but if you don't want to buy the book, that's fine. If you email me, I'll send you the delegation paradigm as a checklist in Word so you can alter it for yourselves. You facilitate engagement. You do whatever's required to to sell the vision to those people. Lay out the vision, mission and values, engage them in it. That's your job. That's the sales job that you do as a leader. If you can't engage them at this point, one, you're failing. If you pick someone with the skill and they've got the will to engage and you're not able to engage them, you better get some help. Then make sure that your delegation is in relation to the DER. That's the desired end result. Not do it this way. That's guaranteed to disempower any competent person. I want you to do it this way. BS. That's belief systems, right? It's nothing to do with how you want the thing done, unless there are compliance issues, in which case you'd probably lay down the regulations for them and let them navigate in between those. But always the desired end result, the context within which that result is required to be produced. There's no good this being the overall plan and someone producing an exquisite something over here that isn't part of that. So your job as the delegator is to make sure that the thing that you're asking from them, they can see how it fits into the overall plan and timing. So when's it got to be delivered by in order for it to dovetail with the output of other people in the team? You get pretty good at this, you just rattle through them. Scary experience, by the way. Teach your staff this, right? Teach your reports this process and watch what happens. My two EAs will come up to me and go, you left a step out, and they stand there and they won't tell me which one it is. So I have to go through the lot, right? If I don't delegate properly. But that's their agreement with me. Transfer responsibility. I've got the word transfer there because you cannot give someone responsibility. There's no way in the world you can. Responsibility has to be taken. The best of people, by the way, who understand your business intimately, will take it and then tell you later. But ideally, if there's some sort of regulation going on or some sort of coordination and you are conducting the orchestra, then you'll make sure that you ask them to take responsibility or set them up to ask for the responsibility. And you also create a covenant with them. And the covenant is this, and it's almost like a mantra. If something goes wrong, I want you to share it with me immediately so that you and I can minimise the impact on the customer and the company and so that you can learn. That's just part of our investment in you. You've just wiped out any chance of it going under the carpet. You've just removed any chance or opportunity for that person to do anything other than tell you. If they do that, they're breaking the covenant with you. And you've got to hold to that. You do what? That's not the right response. Right? You can do that later in a pillow, but not in front of the people. You'd be breaching your covenant with them. Then transfer authority. There's no point asking someone to take responsibility and then not transferring authority. And by the way, ensure you put limits on the authority. If you don't put limits on the authority, you pick a really nice person that's great, but there's small character flaws, they're a megalomaniac, they'll spend $4 million doing the job. A brilliant job, by the way. The really conscientious people, they'll spend $7.20 and it won't be enough to get the job done. So make sure that people understand the limits of their authority so that they can exercise it fully. Then negotiate a priority. The dumb thing is when you delegate to someone and don't check to see what else is on there because they just put it on their stack. And you delegated 12 things yesterday, 15 the day before and 8 before that. And you've forgotten them because this is now the burning issue. So you forgot to say, what else have you got on your plate? And then you're the only one generally, unless God forbid that person's got 2 reports, you're the only one that can reshuffle priorities with them to authorise a change in priority. Because the thing that you gave them yesterday may have been the highest, most burning issue. Only this one is now more so. So you've got to give them the resources to be able to know what their proper priorities are, and you've got to be party to that. The next bit is you've got to agree on monitoring. If you don't, here's the catch. What you've done is delegate a very, very impactful task to a team member who's competent, but the risks are very high. If we get this wrong, we could blow an account worth $2 million or we could damage machinery. Something could go wrong. So you, being being conscientious, then check in with them every half hour to find out how they're going. Now, a good, competent person who took the responsibility on will feel how after your 3rd check-in. Disempowered, ticked off, a whole bunch of things. And yet, all you're doing is being, responsible, because if they do get it wrong, you're going to need to have you need a short time frame with to fix it. And if they're not aware that they got it wrong, etc. How could you fix this? Because it's a soluble problem very easily. Fix it for me, come on. How do we do it? How do we make sure that there's tight monitoring, but not have the person over-controlled? Beautiful. Agree on checkpoints. Is it okay with you if you check in with me every hour for the first day so I can see how it's going and I can give you as much support and input as possible, right? And we lower the risk factor. If everything's gone well that day, the next day I'd like a check-in mid-morning, lunchtime, mid-afternoon. If that goes well, by the end of that week, I'd like a check-in at the end of every day. Is that all right with you? And by the way, would you take responsibility for coming and updating me, not me chasing you? That's the fatal one, by the way. So make sure they take responsibility, accept responsibility for keeping you up to date. Then you've got a perfect agreement. You can control like a control freak the first day or two, and by then you should have enough comfort that they're getting it right and everything trods along all right. But if you don't do it, oh, I meant that, won't work because you've already created the friction. Provide feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Right, so provide feedback. If they did it well, praise them. It's the lowest cost, highest value coin you have in your purse. Paying someone a sincere compliment raises your energy, their energy. And by the way, just a technique, when you praise someone, praise them for their behaviour and the output, not themselves. Right? Don't praise a person for themselves personally because no one hearing that praise can be that person. But if you praise the person for their behaviour and for the result they produced, other people hearing it can go, oh, I know how to get that. I just do the same thing and I get the same praise. And by the way, if you don't think everyone wants praise, interesting study a while ago, they sat people down and subjects down and they paid them compliments. Right? They insulted people to find out how long it would be before someone actually hauled off and tried to hit the researcher. That was a fairly short time frame. It was about 4.5 minutes average with a skilled insulter. And then they tried another one to praise people over a period of time to find out when people got full of praise and had enough. Guess what they found? They didn't. Right? You keep, as long as it's sincere praise, people take it all day long. Right? So praise is the lowest cost, highest value coin in your treasury. When I coach with executives, the first thing they have to do is report to me every day the 3 people they praised that day. It only takes about a week before they go, God, you know, you ought to see what praising does to people. I go, really? Okay, so, and that, I chopped out a few things. I think we're more or less on contract time, are we? Can I have a time count, please? Where are we up to? Finished? So it looks like we're on time, the plane's on the ground. Thank you very, very much for sharing with me and letting me share with you. I appreciate it. And, there's a book outside if you want the long version.
Peter, thank you.
Good.